The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Thousands of alien diplomats sat in their seats, watching the giant screens that floated above the chamber floor. On those screens, a planet burned. Cities that had stood for 10,000 years turned to ash. Ships fell from the sky like dying stars. There was dying, and no one was doing anything to stop it. Ambassador stood at the human delegation's platform. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had served humanity for 40 years, and in that time, she had learned one important thing about the galaxy. Most species only cared about themselves. The invasion force numbers over 3,000 warships, the council speaker announced. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. The defense fleet has been destroyed. We estimate complete planetary conquest within 6 standard days. Watched the faces of the other ambassadors. Some looked sad. A few even looked worried, but none of them moved to help. They had no powerful allies. They had no great fleet. They were a peaceful people who spent their time studying the stars and healing the sick. In the cruel mathematics of galactic politics, they were not worth saving. "Does any delegation wish to propose intervention?" the speaker asked. Silence. Closed her eyes. 50 years ago, she had been a young girl on Earth. She remembered the sky turning red. She remembered the ground shaking as cities fell. The collapse had come without warning, a chain reaction in Earth's core that threatened to tear the planet apart. Humanity had no way to stop it. They had no ships fast enough to evacuate everyone. Billions were going to die. And then came. They appeared in Earth's orbit with a fleet of rescue ships. They worked for 3 months without rest, moving humans to safety, stabilizing the planet's core with technology humanity didn't understand. They saved 11 billion lives. And when it was over, when the last human child was safe, the ambassador had said only one thing. "You needed help, we were able to give it, that is enough." They asked for nothing. No payment, no treaties, no promises. They simply helped because they could, and then they left. Opened her eyes. She pressed the button on her console to request speaking time. "The human delegation wishes to address the council," the speaker said. There was surprise in his voice. Humanity was still considered young and weak by galactic standards. They rarely spoke at council meetings. Stepped forward to the central podium. The lights of 1,000 cameras focused on her. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. 50 years ago, she began, her voice steady, humanity faced extinction. Our world was tearing itself apart. We had no hope, no future. We were going to die. She paused, letting her words sink into the silence. And then they saved us. They did not know us. They owed us nothing, but they came anyway. They worked until their own people collapsed from exhaustion. They gave us medicine, food, and shelter. They gave us hope when we had none. Turned to look at the burning planet on the screen. We asked them why they helped us. They said it was because we needed help and they were able to give it. Nothing more, nothing less. She faced the council again. Her eyes were hard now like stone. They taught humanity something that day. They taught us that kindness is not weakness. They taught us that helping others is the greatest strength any species can have. And they taught us something else. His voice dropped low, but it carried through every speaker in the vast hall. They taught us that debts must be paid. She raised her hand and activated her personal communicator. A single signal shot out into space, reaching human territory in seconds. "This is Ambassador to Human Central Command. Authorization code. Remember, execute Protocol 17. The other ambassadors looked confused. The delegate actually laughed, a harsh, clicking sound. "What will your little fleet do, human?" the ambassador mocked. "You have perhaps 200 warships. We have 3,000. They are already dead. Accept it." Turned to face him. She was small and old, but in that moment, she seemed to fill the entire chamber. "You do not understand," she said quietly. "For 50 years, humanity has been preparing for this moment. Every ship we built, every soldier we trained, every weapon we designed, It was all for this. Not for war, not for conquest, for repayment. She smiled, and there was something terrible in that smile. We remember everything they did for us, every life they saved, every tear they dried, every child they carried to safety. And now we will show the galaxy what it means to have humanity in your debt. The ambassador stopped laughing. "You are declaring war on the Empire," he asked. "You would die for these weak healers." "No," said, "we would kill for them." She turned back to the council. "To every species watching this broadcast, hear me now. Humanity is coming to save the. Any ship that stands in our way will be destroyed. Any planet that harbors forces will face our full strength. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is a promise." The screens flickered. New images appeared, images from human space, shipyards that stretched across entire moons, fleets that darkened the light of stars, soldiers standing in formations that seemed to go on forever. "Protocol 17 is now active," a voice announced over the human communication channel. "All reserve forces mobilized. Estimated deployment time, 18 hours. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Ambassadors shouted at each other. Military advisors screamed into their communicators. The galaxy had just learned something that changed everything. Humanity had been hiding its true strength for 50 years, and now they were coming to collect on a debt. Walked back to her platform. Her assistant, a young man named, was waiting for her with wide eyes. "Ambassador," he whispered, "do you think we can really win?" Looked at the burning planet on the screen. She thought about the who had saved her when she was a little girl. She remembered their kind faces, their gentle hands, their soft voices telling her that everything would be okay. "It does not matter if we win," she said. "What matters is that we try. They saved us without asking if they could succeed. They simply did what was right." She placed her hand on shoulder. "Now it is our turn, and the galaxy will learn that when humanity owes a debt, we pay it in full, no matter the cost." In the darkness of space, human ships began to move. Engines that had been cold for decades roared to life. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment checked their weapons one final time. And across 1,000 worlds, humanity spoke with one voice. "We remember, we are coming, and we will not stop until our debt is paid." Admiral stood on the bridge of the HSS Remembrance, the largest warship humanity had ever built. He was 63 years old, with a face carved by decades of service and eyes that had seen too many friends die. But today, those eyes were alive with purpose. "Status report," he commanded. "Sir, Protocol 17 activation confirmed. All sector fleets are responding. We have mobilization from every human colony in the network." Nodded slowly. He had waited his entire career for this moment. When he was young, his grandmother had told him stories about the collapse. She had been there when the ships appeared in Earth's sky. She had watched them work day and night to save her family. Before she died, she made promise one thing. "If they ever need help," she had said, "you make sure humanity answers." Now he would keep that promise. "How many ships do we have?" he asked. His tactical officer, a young woman named, pulled up the numbers on her screen. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Admiral, I don't think you understand. Everyone is coming." "Give me numbers, Lieutenant." Swallowed hard. Active military vessels, 4,200. Reserve fleet, 2,800. Colony defense forces, 1,600. Private vessels that have volunteered for combat duty, over 3,000. His eyebrows rose. "Private vessels?" "Yes, sir. Cargo ships, mining vessels, even passenger transports. They're all requesting combat assignments. They want to help." The Admiral walked to the main viewing window. Outside, space was filling with lights. Ships of every size and shape were emerging from jump points, falling into formation around the Remembrance. He had never seen anything like it. "Sir," another officer called out, "we're receiving messages from the colony worlds. You need to see this." The main screen lit up with feeds from across human space. On New Sol, young men and women lined up outside recruitment centers. The lines stretched for miles. On Station, retired soldiers put on their old uniforms and reported for duty. On Terra Nova, factory workers refused to go home, choosing instead to work triple shifts building weapons and ammunition. But it was the message from Mars that hit the hardest. An old woman appeared on screen. She sat in a wheelchair, her body frail and bent, but her voice was strong. "My name is Doctor," she said. 70 years ago, I was a child on Earth during the collapse. A medic found me trapped under rubble. She could have left me there. There were so many others who needed help. But she stayed with me for 6 hours, digging with her bare hands until I was free." Tears ran down the old woman's face. "She gave me her own oxygen when my lungs filled with dust. She carried me to safety on her back. And when I asked her name, she said it didn't matter. She said that helping me was reward enough." Doctor straightened in her wheelchair. "I am too old to fight, but I have donated everything I own to the war effort. My home, my savings, everything. Because some debts cannot be measured in money. Some debts can only be paid in blood and sacrifice." The screen filled with similar messages. Millions of humans sharing their stories about the parents who had been saved as children, doctors who had learned medicine from teachers, scientists who had discovered the stars because navigators showed them the way. Wiped her eyes. "Admiral, recruitment stations are reporting they have to turn people away. We don't have enough ships for everyone who wants to fight." Smiled grimly, "Then we'll make more ships." He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to all vessels." "Channel open, sir." Straightened his uniform. When he spoke, his voice carried to every ship in the fleet. "This is Admiral of the Human Defense Force. 50 years ago, we were a dying species. We had no hope, no future, no tomorrow. They changed that. They gave us a second chance at life. They asked for nothing in return." He paused, letting his words settle into the hearts of every soldier listening. Now they face extinction. They believe they can destroy them without consequence. They believe the galaxy will stand by and watch. They believe no one cares about a peaceful species that never hurt anyone. His voice hardened. "They are wrong. Today we show the galaxy what humanity truly is. We are not weak. We are not foolish. We are not afraid to die for what is right. They saved us when we had nothing to offer them. Now we will save them, even if it costs us everything." To every soldier in this fleet, remember why you are here. Remember the stories your parents told you. Remember the kindness that saved your families. And remember that today, we have a chance to repay a debt that has waited 50 years to be settled. We jump in 6 hours. Rest while you can. Write letters to your loved ones. Make peace with whatever gods you believe in. Because when we arrive at Prime, we will fight with everything we have. We will not retreat. We will not surrender. We will save thee, or we will die trying. That is our duty. That is our honor. That is our humanity. He closed the channel. The bridge was silent. Officers wiped their eyes. Some whispered prayers. Others simply stared at the growing fleet outside the window, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. "Sir," said quietly, "they have 3,000 warships. Even with our full strength, this will be hard finished. Yes, it will be hard. Many of us will die." He looked at his crew, young men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They were afraid. He could see it in their eyes, but they were also determined. "Let me tell you something my grandmother told me," he said. "When they came to Earth, they knew they might fail. They knew our planet might tear itself apart before they could save us. But they came anyway. They worked anyway. They gave everything they had, not because success was guaranteed, but because trying was the right thing to do." He walked among his crew, looking each one in the eyes. "Today we might fail, that might destroy us all. But 50 years from now, when children ask what humanity did when they needed help, I want the answer to be simple. We came, we fought, we gave everything. Is that not worth dying for? One by one, his officers nodded. The fear didn't leave their eyes, but something else appeared alongside it. Pride, purpose, resolve. "Admiral," the navigation officer called out, "all ships report ready for jump." Returned to his command chair. Outside, the human fleet stretched across space like a river of stars. Mining ships flew beside battle cruisers. Cargo vessels armed with hastily mounted weapons took their place in formation. An entire species had risen to answer a call that many had waited their whole lives to hear. "Set course for Prime," commanded. "Maximum speed." "Course set, sir." The admiral took one last look at the fleet, at the thousands of ships, the millions of soldiers, the countless humans who had chosen to risk everything for a species that had once done the same for them. "Jump," he ordered. And across the darkness of space, humanity leapt toward destiny. War Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the world burn below. He was pleased. The conquest was going exactly as planned. In 3 more days, every on the planet would be dead or enslaved. Another species would fall to the Empire. "Commander," his sensor officer called out, "we are detecting multiple jump signatures at the system's edge." Turned with interest. "How many ships? Is it the Galactic Council finally sending their useless peacekeepers?" The sensor officer's face went pale. His eyes grew wide as he stared at his screen. "Commander, there are thousands of them." Before could respond, space tore open. Light exploded across the darkness as ship after ship emerged from faster-than-light travel. They kept coming, hundreds, then thousands, then more. "What species?" demanded. "Who dares challenge the—" His officer's voice shook when he answered. "They are humans, Commander." Laughed, the sound echoed across the bridge. "Humans, those primitive creatures, they barely have a fleet worth mentioning. This must be some kind of trick." "No trick, Commander, I count. Over 12,000 vessels. They are moving toward us at maximum speed." The laughter died in his throat. He walked to the viewing window and looked out at the approaching fleet. It filled the entire horizon, an ocean of metal and fire moving with terrible purpose. "Impossible," he whispered. "How can they have so many?" But the human fleet did not care about what was possible. It only cared about what was necessary. Captain stood on the bridge of the HSS Promise, a fast attack cruiser positioned at the front of the human formation. She was young for a captain, only 32, but she had earned her rank through skill and courage. Today, she would need both. "All ships, this is Captain," she broadcast to her squadron. "We are the first wave. Our job is to break their formation and create openings for the main fleet. Hit hard, hit fast, and don't stop moving." She looked at the armada ahead. 3,000 warships arranged in perfect battle lines. They were bigger than human vessels, more heavily armed, covered in weapons that could tear through metal like paper. And smiled. "You know what they don't understand," she said to her crew. "They fight to conquer. They fight to take what doesn't belong to them, but we fight for something else. We fight for people who saved us when we had nothing. We fight to keep a promise." She activated her ship's weapons. And humans always keep their promises. The first wave of human ships slammed into the formation like a fist. They didn't use the careful tactics that other species preferred. They didn't try to outmaneuver or outthink their enemy. They simply attacked. They were not prepared for this. Every species they had fought before valued self-preservation. Every enemy retreated when the odds were bad. But these humans flew directly into weapons fire, taking hits that should have made them run, pressing forward when any sane creature would flee. "What are they doing?" shouted. "This is suicide." His tactical officer shook his head in confusion. "They are ramming us, Commander. Their smaller ships are deliberately crashing into our larger vessels." That's madness. No, Commander, look closer. They are aiming for our weapon systems. They sacrifice one ship to disable our guns, then their other ships attack while we cannot fight back. Watched in horror as a human cargo ship, a simple transport with no weapons, flew directly into the barrel of his flagship's main cannon. The explosion destroyed the human ship completely, but it also destroyed the cannon. They are trading their lives for tactical advantage, the tactical officer said, his voice filled with something that might have been fear. Commander, they do not care if they die. They only care about hurting us. Captain's ship danced through the chaos, firing at every vessel in range. Her crew worked with perfect focus, each person knowing exactly what to do. They had trained for this. They had dreamed of this. Now they were living it. Enemy warship targeting us, her sensor officer yelled. Looked at the battlecruiser turning its guns toward the Promise. It was 10 times her size, with enough firepower to destroy her ship in seconds. All power to engines, she ordered. Take us in close. Captain, that ship will. I know what it will do, trust me. The Promise shot forward, engines screaming. The ship fired but was already moving, spinning her vessel through the barrage of energy beams. One shot grazed her hull, tearing a hole in the lower deck. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded the bridge. But kept flying. She dove under the warship, so close that she could see the individual plates of its armor. Then she fired everything she had, every missile, every gun, every weapon on her ship, directly into the enemy's engine section. The explosion threw the Promise backward, was slammed against her chair as her ship tumbled through space. But when she looked up, the battle cruiser was burning. Direct hit, her weapons officer reported, blood running down his face from a cut on his forehead. Enemy vessel disabled. Good, said, find me another one. Across the battlefield, human ships fought with the same ferocity. They attacked in groups, covering each other, sacrificing themselves to protect their friends. When one ship was damaged, 2 more would move to defend it. When a captain fell, the next officer took command without hesitation. They had never seen anything like it. Their empire had conquered 100 worlds, enslaved a dozen species, and destroyed anyone who stood against them. But no one had ever fought back like this. No one had ever seemed so willing to die. Commander, his communications officer said, the humans are broadcasting a message to our fleet. What does it say? The officer played the recording. A human voice filled the bridge, speaking in simple, clear words. To all forces, you have attacked they are our friends. They saved us when we needed help. Now we have come to save them. You can surrender and we will let you leave. Or you can keep fighting and we will destroy every single one of you. There is no third option. Choose now. Felt something cold in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Fear. For the first time in his long career, he was afraid. Commander, his tactical officer reported, we have lost 400 ships. The humans have lost over 1,000. Then we are winning. No, Commander, look. On the main screen, saw something that stopped his heart. The human fleet wasn't slowing down. Despite their losses, despite the damage they were taking, they kept coming. More ships poured in from the edges of the system. Reinforcements were arriving faster than they could destroy them. They are not trying to win, realized with horror. They are trying to drown us. On the surface of Prime, a young child looked up at the sky. For days, she had seen only ships and fire, but now there were new lights in the darkness. New ships fighting the monsters who had destroyed her home. Mother, she whispered, who are they? Her mother held her close, tears running down her silver face. They are humans, she said. They are here to save us. Why? Her mother smiled through her tears. Because we saved them once, and humans never forget. Above, the battle continued to rage, and for the first time since the invasion began, they had hope. The battle had lasted 9 days. Commander crouched behind a broken wall, his rifle pressed against his shoulder. His armor was cracked. His face was covered in blood and dirt. He had not slept in 3 days, and every muscle in his body screamed with exhaustion. But he did not stop. He could not stop, not while civilians still needed protection. "How many left?" he asked his sergeant, a hard woman named who had been by his side since the beginning. "Our squad is down to 8 soldiers," reported. Her voice was calm but could see the pain in her eyes. They had started with 40. Enemy forces are holding the central hospital, at least 200 soldiers inside. Civilians. Over 1,000, wounded, children, elderly. They are using them as shields. Closed his eyes for a moment. In space, the human fleet was winning. The Armada had lost 2,000 ships and was breaking apart. Admiral had sent message after message calling for ground troops to hold on, promising that victory was close. But victory in space meant nothing if the on-the-ground all died. "We're going in," said. Nodded. She had known he would say that. "They will see us coming. They'll kill hostages." "Then we don't let them see us." Gathered his remaining soldiers, 8 exhausted humans against 200 warriors. The numbers were impossible. Any reasonable officer would wait for reinforcements. Any sane person would find another way. But had watched soldiers murder families for 9 days. He had held dying children in his arms. He had heard the screams of innocent people being tortured for no reason except cruelty. He was done waiting. "Listen carefully," he told his squad. "We go through the service tunnels, 4 teams of 2. We hit them from 4 directions at once. Make noise, cause confusion, draw their attention away from the hostages." "Sir," a young soldier named Minu spoke up, "even if we get inside, we can't fight 200. We'll die." Looked at the young man. Minu was barely 20 years old. He had joined the military to pay for his mother's medicine. He never expected to be here, fighting for an alien species on a planet far from home. "Do you know why they saved humanity?" asked. Minu shook his head. "They didn't know us. They had no reason to help. But they looked at our planet, saw people suffering, and decided that saving lives was more important than their own safety. They risked everything for strangers." Placed his hand on Minu's shoulder. "Today we do the same. We risk everything for strangers, because that is what they taught us. That is what it means to be human. We don't fight because we can win. We fight because it is right." The squad moved through the tunnels in silence. Every step brought them closer to the hospital, closer to the enemy, closer to what might be their last battle. Led the way, his rifle ready, his heart steady. They emerged inside the hospital basement. Above, they could hear voices shouting orders, voices crying in fear, the sounds of people in pain. Looked at his team. 8 soldiers, 8 humans, 8 people willing to die for strangers. "Go," he whispered. They exploded through the doors from 4 directions at once. They turned in surprise, their weapons swinging toward the sudden threat. That moment of confusion was all needed. He fired as he ran, each shot hitting its target. Soldiers fell. Others tried to grab hostages, but human soldiers were already there, placing themselves between the enemy and the civilians. Tackled a warrior who was reaching for a child, driving her knife into the creature's throat. "Get them out," shouted. "Move the civilians." His soldiers worked with desperate speed, pulling survivors toward the exits while fighting off attackers. It was chaos, fire and blood and screaming. Lost track of how many enemies he killed. He just kept moving, kept shooting, kept protecting. A commander appeared in front of him, twice his size, with massive arms and teeth like knives. The creature swung a blade that would have cut in half. He dodged barely and fired point-blank into his chest. The commander fell. But more were coming, always more. "Sir," Minu's voice cut through the noise. "Behind you." Turned too late. A soldier aimed a weapon directly at his head. There was no time to move, no time to react. He was going to die. Then Minyu was there, throwing himself between and the blast. The young soldier took the full force of the attack. His body jerked as energy tore through him. He fell to the ground, smoke rising from his ruined armor. Minyu screamed. He killed the who had shot Minyu, then the next one, then the next. He fought with a fury that seemed inhuman, tearing through enemy soldiers like they were made of paper. Rage filled his veins, hot and terrible. When the last fell, ran to Minyu's side. The young man was still breathing, but barely. Did we save them? Minyu whispered. Looked around. Civilians were being helped outside by his soldiers. Children clung to their mothers. The wounded were being carried to safety. Over 1,000 lives preserved because 8 humans had refused to give up. Yes, said his voice breaking, we saved them. Minyu smiled. Blood ran from his lips, but he smiled. Good, he said. Tell my mother. Tell her I did something that mattered. His eyes closed. Held the young soldier as medics rushed over, as healers used their ancient knowledge to fight for Minyu's life. He held him and made a promise that Minyu's sacrifice would not be forgotten, that none of their sacrifices would be forgotten. Above, the battle in space was ending. The fleet was destroyed, its remnants fleeing into the darkness. Commander was dead, his flagship torn apart by human warships. The invasion was over. But on the ground, the cost was visible everywhere. Human soldiers lay beside civilians, their blood mixed together in the dirt. They had died protecting strangers, fighting for a debt that most of the galaxy had forgotten existed. When Admiral landed on Prime, he found Commander still standing outside the hospital, covered in wounds that should have killed him, watching over the survivors he had saved. Commander said quietly, "The battle is over, we won." Turned to look at him. His eyes were empty with exhaustion, but something else burned behind them. Pride, perhaps, or sorrow. Did we? He asked. We lost so many good people. Looked at the families being reunited, children finding parents, friends embracing, an entire species given a second chance at life. Yes, the Admiral said. We won because of soldiers like you, because of Minyu, because of everyone who gave everything. Nodded slowly. Then he looked up at the sky, where human ships still patrolled, making sure no more enemies would come. The saved 11 billion humans, he said softly. Today we saved them back. The debt is paid. But in his heart he knew the truth. Some debts could never truly be paid. They could only be honored again and again, through sacrifice and love and the willingness to fight for what was right. And humanity would never stop honoring theirs. The galaxy watched in silence. On 1,000 worlds, billions of beings stared at their screens as the final reports came in from Prime. The invasion fleet, 3,000 warships that had conquered dozens of planets, was destroyed. The empire itself had collapsed as news of the defeat spread. Species that had lived under rule for generations rose up and reclaimed their freedom. And at the center of it all stood humanity. Ambassador walked through the ruins of Prime's capital city. The buildings that had stood for 10,000 years were gone, reduced to rubble and ash. But among the destruction there was life. Survivors worked beside human soldiers, clearing debris and searching for the injured. Meals were shared. Stories were told. Friendships were formed between species that had once been strangers. Ambassador, a young woman approached her. I wanted to thank you, your people. They did not have to come. Looked at the woman. She was thin and tired, with silver skin marked by burns and scars, but her eyes were bright with gratitude. Yes, we did, said softly. 50 years ago your people saved mine. Today we return the favor. That is how it should be. But the cost, the woman whispered. So many humans died for us. And we would do it again. Took the woman's hands in her own. The taught humanity something important, that compassion is not weakness, that helping others is the greatest strength. We will never forget that lesson. Across the galaxy, Other species were learning their own lessons. The Emperor called an emergency meeting of his war council. They were a proud warrior race, known for their brutal conquests and their belief that strength was everything. They had considered humanity weak, primitive, not worth their attention. They would never make that mistake again. "Show me the battle data again," commanded. The holographic display filled with images of the human fleet, ships ramming into enemy vessels, soldiers charging into impossible odds, pilots flying directly into enemy weapons fire to protect their friends. They lost 8,000 ships, the war minister reported. Nearly 2 million soldiers died, but they never retreated, not once, not even when victory seemed impossible. Why? Demanded. What could make them fight like that? The minister was silent for a moment, then he spoke carefully. According to our intelligence, they saved humanity 50 years ago. The humans came to repay that debt. A debt? They threw away millions of lives for a debt. Yes, Emperor. It appears that humans view loyalty differently than we do. When someone helps them, they remember forever, and they repay that help no matter the cost. Sat back in his throne. For his entire life, he had believed that power came from force, from the ability to crush your enemies and take what you wanted. But these humans had shown him something different. They had shown him that there was another kind of power, one built on bonds that could not be broken. "Update our diplomatic files," he ordered quietly. "Humans are not to be threatened or attacked under any circumstances, and find out if there are any favors we owe them. I want those debts settled immediately." Similar conversations happened across the galaxy. Species that had ignored humanity now studied them carefully. Empires that had considered invading human space quietly abandoned their plans. Everyone had seen what happened when you threatened humans or their friends. The message was clear: help humanity and they will never forget. Hurt them or their allies and they will never stop coming for you. On Prime, the rebuilding continued. Human engineers worked with architects to design new cities. Human doctors shared medical knowledge with healers. Human teachers opened schools for children, while elders taught human students about their ancient wisdom. Commander stood on a hill overlooking the capital, watching the work below. His wounds had healed, but the scars remained, both on his body and in his heart. He thought about Minu often. The young soldier had survived, saved by healers who used every technique they knew to pull him back from death. He was still recovering in a hospital, but he would live. "You look troubled," a voice said behind him. Turned to see an elderly man approaching. He moved slowly, his silver skin wrinkled with age, but his eyes were kind. "I am thinking about what comes next," admitted. "The battle is over, but there is so much more to do." The nodded. "There is always more to do, that is the nature of life." He sat down on a rock and patted the space beside him. "Sit with me, Commander. Let an old man tell you a story." Sat. 50 years ago, they began, I was a young medic. I was sent to Earth during the collapse. For months I worked without rest, pulling humans from the rubble, healing their wounds, carrying their children to safety. "Why did you do it?" asked. "Because I could," they said simply. "Because when I looked at your people, I saw beings who needed help. It did not matter that you were different from us. It did not matter that we had never met before. What mattered was that you were suffering, and we could ease that suffering." He turned to look at. "I never expected to be repaid. None of us did. We helped because it was right, not because we wanted something in return. But when your ships appeared in our sky, when your soldiers gave their lives for our children," his voice cracked with emotion, "that was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." Felt tears forming in his eyes. "You taught us this," he said. "You showed us what it meant to be truly good. We are only following your example." The smiled, his ancient face lighting up with joy. "Then we have given each other the greatest gift possible. We have made each other better." At the Galactic Council, a new treaty was signed. Humanity and the formed an alliance, not one built on politics or trade, but on something deeper, something unbreakable. Ambassador stood before the assembled delegates, her voice strong and clear. To every species watching this broadcast, hear me well. Humanity has learned that kindness is strength. We have learned that helping others is the foundation of civilization. And we have learned that debts of the heart are the most sacred of all. She looked directly into the cameras. If you are in trouble, call for us. We will come. If you need help, reach out your hand. We will take it. Not because we want power or influence, but because that is who humanity is now. They showed us the way, and we will walk that path forever. She paused, letting her words settle across the galaxy. But remember this as well. If you harm innocents, if you attack the helpless, if you bring suffering to those who cannot defend themselves, humanity will find you, not for conquest, not for revenge, but for justice. They learned this lesson. Do not make the same mistake. The council chamber was silent. Thousands of delegates sat frozen, understanding finally dawning in their minds. Humanity was not just another young species trying to find its place. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They were protectors. Outside, children played in the ruins of their city, watched over by human soldiers who had become their friends. The sound of laughter rose into the air, mixing with the noise of construction and the songs of workers rebuilding their world. On the hill, Commander and the Old sat together, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors of gold and purple. Neither spoke. There was nothing more to say. The debt was settled, the bond was forged, and across the stars the galaxy trembled, not just in fear but in hope. Because humanity had shown them all what was possible when beings chose love over hatred, sacrifice over selfishness, and kindness over cruelty. And nothing in the universe would ever be the same.